something impossible happened off the coast of Australia. It started with a tracking device. Scientists expected months of routine migration data. Instead, they recovered evidence of an attack nobody thought was possible. The signal didn't fail. The battery didn't die. The device simply went somewhere it was never designed to go. Somewhere warm. Somewhere alive. By the time researchers downloaded the data, every obvious explanation had already collapsed. One by one, they eliminated every known predator capable of doing it. And what remained forced them to rethink everything they believed about the ocean's food chain. But before they reached that conclusion, they first had to figure out what had disappeared. Let's begin. The disappearance. Off the southwestern coast of Australia, researchers weren't tracking just any marine animal. The tag belonged to a healthy, adult female great white shark, 9 feet long, fully grown, feeding normally. Showing every sign of an animal that should have had decades left at the top of her food chain, decades of hunting, breeding, and moving through waters she had every reason to consider hers. The tag attached to her was designed to run silently for months, recording depth, temperature, and light levels, before releasing on its own and floating to the surface to transmit its data. Nobody expected anything unusual. Sharks get tagged, sharks get tracked, and most of the time the story that comes back is simple. She swam here, she dove there, she fed, she moved on. For a long stretch, that's exactly the story this tag told. Routine, quiet, unremarkable. Then the story stopped making sense. Somewhere on a beach in Western Australia, someone eventually picked up a piece of plastic no bigger than a phone, washed in with the tide, salt-crusted and unremarkable. They had no idea that the object in their hand contained one of the strangest predator records marine science had ever recovered. A silent witness to something that happened in total darkness, thousands of feet down, with no one watching. But that discovery was still weeks away from being understood. First, the data had to be downloaded. And the moment it was, everything changed. The impossible number. Here's the moment that stopped the research team cold. At one specific point in the archived data, the temperature reading jumped by nearly 30 degrees in a matter of minutes, and it didn't spike and fall back. It held there, steady, sustained. Exactly the kind of reading you'd expect if the sensor were no longer sitting in open ocean water at all, but somewhere warm, somewhere alive. At the same moment, the depth reading did something just as strange. The tag plunged from near the surface down toward nearly 2,000 feet, far faster than any voluntary dive this species is known to make. Researchers went through the possibilities one at a time. The tag hadn't sunk. It hadn't broken. It hadn't simply detached and drifted to the bottom on its own. There was only one explanation left standing. It was inside something alive. A pause, then the confirmation nobody wanted to say first. It had been swallowed. The numbers refused to lie, which meant only one thing. The shark hadn't died and drifted to the bottom. She had become food. But for what? A 9-foot predator isn't prey. Before going further, understand exactly what was just eaten, because this wasn't some small, vulnerable animal caught off guard. Adult great whites can exceed 20 feet and 4,000 pounds. They can sense a heartbeat through open sand. They can detect a single drop of blood diluted across enormous volumes of water. For millions of years, they have sat at the top of the ocean's food chain, with by every conventional definition, nothing left to fear. No natural predator. No rival at the top. Nothing that hunts them back. That assumption just broke. Something out there had hunted, killed, and swallowed a fully grown apex predator, dragged her body down to depths she'd never voluntarily visit, and then simply carried on undisturbed, unseen, and completely unbothered by what it had just done. Researchers had a growing list of theories. One by one, they were about to fall apart. Suspect 1, the orca. The first name on the list wasn't a guess. Killer whales are the only animal on record with a confirmed, repeated history of hunting adult great whites. In South Africa, a pair of orcas became infamous for flipping sharks upside down and surgically removing a single organ, the liver, with almost clinical precision, leaving the rest of the carcass behind. It's one of the most well-documented predator relationships in the entire ocean, which made the orca the obvious first name to check. So the researchers ran the numbers, and the numbers said no. An orca's internal body temperature sits close to 98 degrees. What the tag recorded was over 20 degrees colder than that, a gap far too large to explain away. Orcas hunting great whites also tend to stay in shallow water, where they can control their prey at the surface. A rapid 2,000-foot dive doesn't fit that pattern at all. And there was one more problem. An orca kill leaves a specific signature, one organ removed, the body largely intact. This tag didn't behave like it had passed through a surgical strike. It behaved like it had been swallowed whole and held for hours. The orca theory was dead, which left a far more uncomfortable possibility. Suspect 2, something from the deep. If not an orca, then what about something built for those depths? Sperm whales regularly dive thousands of feet chasing squid, and they're more than large enough to physically swallow a shark. For a moment, this felt like the answer. Then the temperature ruled it out too. Sperm whales run even warmer than orcas, close to 99 degrees, still nowhere near what the tag recorded. And behaviorally, it made even less sense. Sperm whales don't hunt sharks. Their world is squid, almost exclusively. There was no reason for one to have been anywhere near this shark in the first place. That suspect was gone too. And with two of the ocean's largest, most capable predators eliminated in a matter of hours, the researchers were left with a growing, uneasy feeling. Whatever this was, it wasn't behaving like anything in the textbook. Suspect 3, something bigger, something hungrier. What about another apex predator, a tiger shark, an oceanic whitetip? Something aggressive enough to try its luck against a great white. The math killed it instantly. To swallow prey whole, a predator generally needs to be roughly double its length. The largest confirmed tiger shark on record is around 14 feet. Not enough shark, and not enough size difference to make an attack like this plausible. There was even a fringe theory about a colossal squid dragging prey to depth. It didn't survive contact with basic biology. Squid are cold-blooded, and no squid attack produces a sustained warm body reading. 3 suspects down, and the data still refused to change, ruling out the machine itself. Before anyone was willing to accept what came next, there was one more possibility to eliminate the tag itself. Could this simply be a malfunction? A corrupted sensor throwing out garbage numbers? It's always the first question, and a fair one. But broken electronics don't behave like this. A failing sensor produces noise-random, inconsistent spikes with no shape to them. What this tag recorded was clean, coherent. A single, sharp depth change, followed by a temperature rise that held steady for hours, then gradually faded as the tag eventually passed through and was expelled. That's not a malfunction. That's the anatomy of an event. Something happened, it ran its course, and then it ended. So if it wasn't the orca, wasn't the whale, wasn't a rival species, and wasn't a broken device, what was left? For a moment, the room went somewhere the data hadn't taken them yet. If every known predator had just been ruled out, what remained wasn't necessarily a known animal at all, the kind of gap where an obvious, almost irresistible thought creeps in. What if this is something science has never documented at all? That thought didn't survive contact with the evidence for long. But before it fell apart, it hung in the room for a moment nobody wanted to admit out loud. Only one possibility remained. The answer no one expected. What if the predator that ate this shark was another great white? Not a slightly bigger cousin that got lucky. A great white large enough that a 9-foot adult female was, to it, simply a meal. Here's why the biology actually fits. Great whites aren't fully cold-blooded like most fish. Through a specialized circulatory adaptation, they can retain heat in specific parts of their bodies, muscles, eyes, digestive organs running warmer than the surrounding water, even in the cold. In water this frigid, a large great white's internal temperature typically sits right around the number this tag recorded. Not close. Exact. But here's the part researchers weren't expecting: this species could go far deeper than anyone had assumed. The depth fits too. While most great whites live in shallower coastal water, the species is capable of far deeper dives than people assume. Documented descents beyond 3,000 feet exist in the tracking record. And the consumption pattern fits perfectly as well. A great white attacking another shark doesn't perform a surgical liver removal. It swallows its prey whole, or in large sections, device and all, leaving that tag trapped inside a digestive system for hours before it was finally expelled. So, how big does an animal need to be to consume a 9-foot great white? Using that same rough 2-to-1 length ratio, researchers landed on an estimate of 16 to 20 feet. Right at the absolute upper limit of what this species has ever been confirmed to reach. And that's where this case became even stranger. That upper limit isn't theoretical. Great whites of that exact size exist. One, famously, was filmed alive years later off the coast of Mexico, verified at roughly 20 feet, one of the largest of her kind ever documented on camera. Animals like her are rare, poorly studied, and spend almost all their time far from the coastlines where shark research actually happens. For decades, sightings of sharks that size were dismissed as exaggeration. Now there's footage. She has been observed calmly, in open water, by divers who describe her as unhurried, unbothered, and utterly massive. A living confirmation that this size class isn't a rumor or an exaggeration. It's real, it's out there, and it's almost never seen. Which raises the real question this case leaves behind. If this has been happening the whole time, right at the edge of what we can measure, how many times has it happened before, completely unrecorded, a pattern nobody wanted to see? Here's what almost never makes it into the popular version of this story. This wasn't a one-time anomaly. It has a paper trail stretching back decades. Older fishing and research records include multiple great whites recovered bearing massive bite wounds. Wounds with spacing and serration patterns that could only have come from another great white's jaws. For years, these were dismissed as territorial fights. In the late 1990s, a research vessel filmed a large great white, physically driving a smaller one away from a whale carcass. Not posturing, but a real, aggressive attack. In the years since, groups of great whites have turned up off South Africa, carrying matching parallel bite wounds. Same depth, same spacing, same source. Individually, none of these cases looked extraordinary. A bite here, a displaced carcass there. Together, they started looking impossible to ignore. It even shows up earlier than birth. Sand tiger shark embryos are known to consume their own siblings inside the womb, ensuring only the strongest survive to be born, a brutal competition that begins before a single pup ever sees open water. Large tiger sharks prey on smaller sharks of other species. Bull sharks have been filmed attacking other sharks in tight coastal waters. Cannibalism isn't rare in this family. It's simply rarely witnessed. What makes the great white version so hard to accept isn't that it happens, it's the size of the animals involved. A shark preying on a smaller member of its own species is one thing when the prey is a pup, still small enough to be vulnerable to almost anything. It's an entirely different thing when the prey is a fully mature, 9-foot adult female, an animal that, in any other encounter, would be the most dangerous thing in the water. She wasn't unlucky. She wasn't weak. She was simply smaller than the one thing in the ocean that still outranked her. Why we almost never see it happen. There's a reason this stayed hidden from science for so long, and it comes down to 3 brutal limitations. The open ocean is almost incomprehensibly vast, and we've meaningfully explored only a sliver of it. Below 1,000 feet, for practical purposes, we are blind. The number of great whites ever successfully tagged and tracked is a tiny fraction of an already small global population. We're drawing conclusions about an entire species from a handful of data points. That means the biggest sharks on Earth may spend their entire lives without a single human ever seeing them. And the animals we do tag tend to be the smaller coastal ones, because that's where researchers can reach them. The true giants, the 16 to 20-foot individuals capable of this kind of predation, live almost entirely out of reach. In open water, nobody is watching. It's a little like trying to understand elephant behavior by only ever observing the calves at the edge of a park, while the largest, most dominant adults roam somewhere miles beyond where anyone is looking. Put those 3 limits together, and you get exactly what happened here, one of the ocean's most significant predator-prey relationships, hiding in plain sight for decades. Which means something uncomfortable. If this shark exists, there's a good chance we've already crossed paths with others and never realized it. What this actually changes this isn't just a strange story with a satisfying ending. It rewrites part of how scientists have to model this species. Conservation strategies for great whites are built around threats like fishing and habitat loss, not predation from within the species itself. If the biggest individuals are regularly removing smaller ones from the population, survival estimates built without that factor could already be wrong. There's a ripple effect too. Great whites shape the behavior of everything beneath them: seals, smaller sharks, entire fish populations. All of them adjusting their movement based on where the sharks are and aren't. Reshape the great whites from the inside, and that ripple moves through the whole ecosystem, undetected. For half a century, popular culture has painted the great white as the fixed endpoint of the ocean's food chain. Untouchable, unchallenged. This case is the clearest proof that image was never entirely accurate. The hierarchy isn't a straight line. It's a shifting scale, where the same animal can be the most feared predator in one encounter and the meal in the next. Which means the next question is unavoidable. How many other so-called apex predators have a version of this hiding inside their own species, waiting for the one tag, the one camera, the one accident of timing that finally catches it? We've spent decades ranking the ocean's predators as if the list were fixed and final. This case suggests it never was. One tag, one meal, one question left. That's all it took to rewrite what we thought the ocean's top predator really was. Somewhere off the coast of Australia, there is very likely a great white shark, 16 to 20 feet long, swimming right now, completely unaware that she ever did anything remarkable. Because from her perspective, she didn't. She simply found something smaller than herself and did what predators have always done. The only reason we know any of this happened is that a small piece of plastic survived a journey through open water and happened to wash up somewhere a person could find it. Without it, this shark would just be another tag that stopped transmitting, a quiet mystery filed away and forgotten. Instead, it became the clearest evidence we've ever had that the ocean's food chain doesn't end where we drew the line. For 100 years, that shark's silhouette has been the picture people reach for when they imagine the top of the food chain. This case doesn't erase that image. It just adds a line underneath it. One more predator, bigger, older, and almost entirely unseen, that the great white herself would have every reason to fear. Somewhere out there, right now, something just as large is moving through cold, dark water, untagged, unfilmed, and completely unknown to us. And the next tag that washes ashore might not tell us a story we're ready to hear.